Hi everyone. So today we're here for another episode of Table 41. This is going to be a rather different episode. Today I'm going to be mostly just a monologue talking about some things I wanted to address. So we've just concluded our Canadian tour and I'm incredibly excited about how that went. I want to share some of that. Also, my manager told me we have a couple of Q&As to answer, so I intend to do that at the end of the episode. Now, I wanted to begin this episode by talking about my past, a little bit about what it is that made me want to become a composer. And in earnest, often avoid private conversations like this. However, in trying to sell the tour, we realized that it's really difficult to market yourself in any capacity if you don't really have something people can connect to and you don't want to share about yourself. And I'll admit I'm a rather private person, or at least I try to, but some exceptions need to be made, and I've been convinced to um, partake in this endeavor. So hopefully we'll see how it goes. So I'll intend to speak from the heart. I don't necessarily have anything prepared, but I wanted to walk you through some of the challenges I faced in life, some of the great things that I've had that made me want to become a musician, then more importantly, made me want to become a composer, and some struggles that I had to overcome in that interest. So, I think I wanted to begin with where I was born. So, I was born in Baku in 1997, Baku, Azerbaijan. Used to be a former Soviet state country, now independent, I believe, since 1992. And but the remnants of the Russian Soviet system was very much relevant to that time. Um, I went to Semiletka 7-year program school for music, and that was my first formal introduction to music. I had no reason to believe that I would be a good musician or even would fare in any musical field because I didn't really know what it entailed. I have no musicians in the family. Um, we had a piano in the house by absolute happenstance. There is a famous singer from the Soviet Union. His name is Muslim Magamayev, and his daughter attended university with my mom, and they were friends. And well, after she got married, she moved to the States. But her father bought her a gift piano around either for the wedding. I did not want to make this up. I don't exactly remember why he ended up buying her piano, but that piano ended up in our house because she entrusted it to my mother. And in some sense, I think this is where it all began, and I owe it to them. He chose an incredible Wayne Bach, which I think, I might be wrong, but at the time, this was either a German or a Czechoslovakian piano back when that was a thing. So that was a that instrument, I think, was home. Truly, I think it had a wonderful sound, and I have pictures of me as a baby, essentially even trying to do some things on the keyboard. And I think I've had a rather even spiritual maybe connection with that instrument. And so a lot of my fondest memories were in front of it. And I kind of tried to live my life in the black and white of it all. And funny how it works. These happenstances, I never thought music would change my life so. Had no reason to believe it. I don't think my parents did either. Actually, I have a really funny story. I think many musicians, now that I've had talked to some, have similar stories where I was convinced, me and my mother are still very convinced that this is true. Because my mom, when she was pregnant with me, was listening to a lot of Vivaldi CDs that she had. I think it was some Dutch gramophone collection. And this was like an evening routine for her every night, pretty much. That was that CD was in the player, and she just resumed it every evening. And those tunes were memorable. And I remember that we moved houses, apparently, according to my mom. And I remember when we were unpacking some of the older boxes that she found this CD and she started playing it. And I knew the song. I jumped up. Like, this is the first time I heard it. I probably was 5 at that time, if I remember right. My mom should vouch for that better, I think. But um, it's odd. I paused the thing and tried to prove to my mom that I'm not crazy, that I know this tune by memory, and I tried to hum. I think it was Spring of all these seasons or something like that. And my mom was astonished because she said that she hasn't heard the CD since she was pregnant with me. And and that, to me, that clicked immediately because I remember that darkness, but there was that music. Also, by happenstance, my mother uh, told me that my grandpa named me Ozan, which means bard in Turkish, which I think was really fitting as well because I mean, I certainly didn't know that. I think even close to 10 years old when I found out. Um, but, well, I think as Carl Jung would say, some synchronicities were hard to avoid in my life very early on. And I feel truly blessed in some sense and content in my heart that something was meant to be. Um, but anyhow, I started learning the piano with a private teacher when I was about 5, 6 years old. She came to our house. She's an astounding player, and to this day, her heavy hand and her playing, she had such finesse on that piano. Because I sat in front of that same piano for hours and hours, but I never had that rich tone that she was able to produce. She was a strong lady, and she had such control over whatever she was playing, and an immaculate pianissimo that I didn't know my instrument could make. And I remember I was trying to literally chase that sound as a kid. I was trying to recreate it after she would leave, but I think I had too much pride to admit to her that I was trying to play like her. Rather, during the lessons, I was stubborn, trying to show that uh, I knew better. Um, Unfortunately, that little, yeah, unfortunately, that tended to be too often the case where I caught myself being a little too much of a know-it-all as a child. But she was an excellent teacher, and I think she instilled a newfound love for music. I even remember I started my first piece on the piano was Surok, I think Marmotte by Beethoven. I think it was in A minor. It's a little one-page piece. And she also was convincing me to do solfeggio lessons right away. I think this was in earnest. She was trying to prepare me to potentially going into the music schools. And I was singing the song and playing along. And this was a wonderful experience. And I think the second piece that I learned was a simplified version of the Badineri or something like. Yes, it was from the orchestral suite of Bach, but she played it with such a wonderful, rich tone that was, it still chimes in my head. That dun, 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 dun. Anyway, so that was that was my first introduction to the classical discipline. Truly, it was through this woman, and her name is Jamila, and she was perhaps my first love of piano realized. And she was very patient, and Lord knows I needed a teacher like her. And then I found my teacher that stayed with me for a decade virtually, and her name was Nazila. And she worked at the music school. She later became the director of the Baku Philharmonic, and she's a rather accomplished and decorated musician herself. But especially as a pedagogue, she's an astounding woman. And also, through much adventure and stubbornness and fighting, um, got me to a certain level of playing. Um, I loved lessons with her. I think she made music uh, seem so much more fun than other students had experienced with other teachers in the music school. And I always listened to some of their stories, and I was like, wow, it sounds like a war zone that these kids were going through. It's terrible traumatic experiences. And I got so lucky. I got so lucky with my teachers. Spoiled, certainly I was with this, I think. And but that's really when composition began. I think I was about 7 years old when I actually finished one first piece. I was really enamored with Bach. All I wanted to play was Bach at the time. I think Nazhan had me playing some inventions as you do, and boy, I hated Czerny, and I was trying to replace every Czerny prelude with more Bach and the School of Velocity, whatever it was, but always try to bring a sweet movement here and there, maybe a prelude, maybe something else, maybe another invention. And she said, you can't just play Bach. Um, but at that time, I was also composing some Baroque-ish counterpoint style music, which I called aumentare nel barocco, because if you're going to embrace the Italian terminology all the way, I kind of went into that. But and I think that pretension almost is actually a very important side note, but we'll get back to that in a minute. But I wrote a 2-page piece in C minor. This was really important. And this is the first composition I've ever finished. And I still have the score somewhere. I kept it for memory's sake. So I tried to show it to my teacher, and she said it's good. We can work on some things. And I understood from that sentiment that maybe I was lacking in some departments. Looking back at it now, I think it was mostly a tonic and dominant, as you do. But it was very repetitive tune. In other words, for those of you who aren't musicians, pardon my lapses in terminology. Um, so funny how that went. I enjoyed those times quite a bit. And that's for the first time in my life, after composing, that is, that I decided that music could have been my career. I was very careful about voicing this because I have no reason to believe that this was a realistic proposition. Certainly, everybody, when I was a child, told me that I was a gifted pianist, that I was like, used fancy words, but, and it certainly did go to my head. Um, I believed it. And looking back at even some of the old VCRs we have, it wasn't bad, but it's certainly not that exceptional. But um, but in my head, I think I was plunged into a different world. I was in a world where people told me I belonged, to a world where I was told I was talented, in a world where people who've dedicated their lives to this seem to be so content that I was on the right path and trajectory to be a great pianist and a great composer. And this is where my fascination of the musicology side of things started to come as well. I started watching movies like Amadeus, partaking in many, many different documentaries about great pianists, whether it be like Richter or Vladimir Ashkenazy, who was one of heroes growing up for me, as well as Fazıl Say, a Turkish pianist, certainly was a great character. I got to meet him on 2 occasions, actually, but that's a different story. Um, he, these people inspired me to a new form of appreciating this art that I started endeavoring to actually look into what it is that I wanted to do in greater detail. And composition was clearly the outlier. I kept doing that no matter what, because that was, um, honestly, it began as something for attention, because I was getting a lot of attention for it, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the attention, but I also enjoyed the process, but probably the attention more. And I think, truthfully, probably around 16, 15 years old, right around like approaching high school years, I I was really still embedded in that side of things. I kept composing. I think I finished certainly over 50 opuses by then. I submitted some to festivals. I won a lot of competitions like that. Did some things here and there, but it never felt right. But then I had to face something that was rather interesting, I think, in my life. Around 16, 17 years old, I believe. I actually wrote a letter to myself, which I have since misplaced, which breaks my heart. But I did it explicitly for the reason that I might want to look back at it in a decade. But I wrote something to the effect of an earnest meditation as to my artistic intentions, and realized that everything I've been writing so far, I'm working on, has been um, rotten at its roots and fundamentally done out of pride. I don't actually think I had anything to say in any artistic semblance that I might define today. I felt like my primary motivators for it and decision making factors were all rooted in that wanting to be a wannabe next Mozart, Beethoven, listening to all these great stories of musicians that lived in a different age, that had to overcome their hardships and persevere through their spirit of their art. And I think I resonated with that, and I wanted to partake in that culture of it all because I these people had affected me so drastically, and I've wanted to be that for somebody else. But in earnest, I started thinking, can I just write a piece and not put my name on it? Be content with somebody even perhaps stealing it. At the time, I was also reading about the Mozart Requiem thing, and it kind of terrified me that people can commission a work and then steal it from you. And I suppose that was always a irrational fear of mine to some extent with some of the modern avenues of publishing, but uh, I didn't really know that as a child. But I was really afraid that somebody would steal my work, and then I started thinking about it. Why do I actually care that somebody would steal my work? And then I realized how important it was for me that my work had my name on it, and how I couldn't separate that from my art. I couldn't let my art be. And then I actually started thinking, what is my art? What is it? Like, is every piece an antecedent to a consequent? And then did I do this? And then I started noticing some patterns and then terrifying things where I realized I was a composer that was exercising uh, puzzles to some sense. I was solving puzzles to create new and intricate, weird ideas, sounds, tried to create something new that didn't exist, that was catchy, but it wasn't ever resonant towards emotions. It was always genuinely first intellectual. It had to stimulate some sense of, ooh, this is cool. Let's try this. Can I code something backwards or do that? But it seldom had any bigger picture things, or even I never even focused on what kind of harmonic language I wanted to employ in some of my compositions and where did I even wanted to begin. And I was content that I knew everything I needed to know when I was young as well. Uh, like not knowing a lot, frankly. Um, Looking back at it now, I think not knowing virtually anything. So aside from good notation, I like to point out that I think I took painstaking care to make sure that my notation was grammatical correct, that I had the strong beats down, that I wasn't writing in poor voicing, and but that kind of depressed me because I felt like the thing that crafted my identity as a young adult was built on such rotten roots that I couldn't lie to myself anymore. And but I felt void of anything I actually wanted to do. That was a very difficult time in my life, I think. But I feel like most people go through that when they're that age. Everybody in their own right has different obstacles to overcome in adolescence. But yeah, um, I didn't think much of where anything can go after that. In fact, I think I almost didn't allow myself to uh, entertain becoming a professional musician. I also despised piano competitions. I despised the performance culture so deeply, even though it has given me everything, including so much attention and nice words and encouragements. But that culture has of experts telling me how to play the same scores I've been staring at for years and years, of trying to perfect every little moment, memorizing scores up and down. I wanted to steer clear of that. The irony is, it was the only thing I think I almost was a little comfortable doing. So in my university years, I decided to pursue the performance side of things anyway. But I think to no avail. Sincerely, I think I was right the first time. I think composition was it for me. I kept composing no matter what, even in my university years. Substantially less. I think my output was close to 3 pieces a year, maybe even less. And 25 years old. I'm currently 27. I've officially, I suppose, published my first opus, and I've reset my opus numbers. And I think for the first time in my life, I actually know where I want to begin. And I think I have something to say. I'm curious if I have the privilege to look back at this in 10 years and see what I think of it then. But currently, I actually feel like for the first time in my life, I have something genuine to contribute as an artist. So I'm not in any rush. Anyhow, I will resume this in a moment. I I will share about some of my composition philosophies in a bit, as I think they're probably more important than other things that are going on in my life. When we were trying to promote this tour, we were looking at ways that we can market myself, where I come from, the schools I graduated from, and then I look at other artists and everybody's descriptors are much the same, and maybe a little disappointed. They all have, winner of this competition, graduate of this school, masters in this and that, this many wins in that, second place in this, and seems to be their accolades are adjacent to their title, which I guess is the etiquette. I don't really blame them for that as the individuals, and that is what the expectations are. Maybe I had some insecurities towards not partaking in more of those things in my youth, maybe. But in earnest, I feel like I didn't want people to know me like that. So I didn't put it on my website. I didn't say what university I graduated from. Never said what schools I attended. Didn't say a lot of stuff. But and some of it is because I feel like, yes, certainly I don't have maybe too much to brag with. Maybe at a point that would have been true. But I certainly had a lot. I think, especially with the former Soviet educations that Azeri communities employed, they were fabulous. We make one of the best music schools in the world, and chess, by the way. I still stand by that. I think we have a yeah, I think we have an absolutely immaculate system when it comes to that. And we have a lot of government support for that. Obviously, I don't want to lie to you guys and pretend I know what is going on now, but since I've left, I doubt too many things has changed for the negative. I think that, if anything, it's only better. I've been living in Canada since 2012, and it is or end of 2011. God, I should know this, but yeah, I'm a proud Canadian now, and this country has given me a lot. More importantly, it's given me the peace and time to find myself, I think, as an artist. And especially in college, I think I did everything I could to actualize this. And the college education, I had amazing professors that were also more than patient. Um, and I was always a little bit content with doing things my way. And I will admit, m- some of the time it was objectively worse. But that's just in retrospect, I think. At the time, I was quite enjoyed what I was doing. They let me pick all my own pieces. I think I graduated with stuff like the Schumann Sonata Number 2, found the Secret Movement from the Henley Library that he never fully published. There was so much fun in those years. I made the friends that I still have kept today. Um, but more importantly, I think I've learned something leaving university, which is going to bring me to this tour, actually. So, anyhow, as I was saying, when we were trying to find what to mention, I didn't want to say graduate of this school, student of this, or as winner of that. I was more concerned with, you know what, none of this really matters. And at the end of the day, as a composer, don't necessarily need these performance accolades. People either like your music or they don't. But people, still the key word. How do we find people to listen to? How I just wanted to show my work to people, and for the first time in my life, this was a something that I was a little more comfortable with than before because it seemed like you're standing naked when people are listening to your work. It truly is. Um, I think all composers, maybe to some extent, I like to believe, chase that high after the first time, but um, it is brilliant, and you genuinely want to be what the masters of old and these canonized great composers were to you. You want to be that. You want to leave the world more beautiful than how you found it. And in that, music is such an immaculately beautiful language. And yeah. So a little bit about the tour and how it went. This was my first tour. We did 7 cities in Canada. We did like a national little circuit, and the program was rather entertaining. It was challenging at first. I decided to do Tchaikovsky seasons. I think, well, we endeavored on doing that. I assumed that would be around 40, 45 minutes of music for the first curtain, and the second curtain being completely my compositions. But I kind of left it to last minute. Admittedly, I thought the repertoire isn't too difficult, and it wasn't. I just was really starting to worry by September that I wasn't going to memorize the whole lot. So, end of September, I decided virtually like 30 days before going on tour to replace them with 2 Beethoven sonatas that I had played prior in college. And say for bet, you have 4 weeks at least to 6 movements individually and neat or 40 minutes. I really wanted the works to be pristine, and I regret to say I only went up to July for the Tchaikovsky, and the memory was beginning to be an issue. I was going to finish up August. I really loved August. I was actually trying to power through that one, but it just wasn't going to be as polished as I wanted it to be for tour. So we decided to cut it last minute and go with a program that we could do justice. Fortunately, we were able to make the adjustments. We went on tour, and I would actually consider this to be a tremendous success for myself. And this is something that, for the first time in my life, I'd taken a big risk, including a fiscal one that actually turned out okay. And I think every bit of this tour was worth it. And and this was my way of establishing myself as a composer, going out there and trying to see how I do, and trying to test myself. I have never played for an hour and a half, let alone 7 times. I think at a point, yeah, well, I know at a point in the tour, in 5 days, we did 4 concerts. Yeah, so that's the first half the tour went by really fast. And I have a newfound respect for traveling performers. Um, One of my favorite violinists, actually, James Ennis, he was here in Calgary recently. I wa I was thinking of this guy's repertoire range as well. I was thinking, man, I kept this hour and a half. I did it night after night after night. But this guy, he has virtually probably a similar schedule. He does it every month. I see him on social media posting, but he has so many concertos under his pocket. I swear, this guy has 4 hours of music every month, and it's different. And I'm so astounded. Of course, he's a different caliber, a professional. I hope to be like him one day. And that takes different type of experience and a very different type of repertoire uh, awareness, I suppose. And but astounding, some of these people. And anyhow, I just wanted to share my sincerest newfound respect for these touring professionals because this was my first time doing it as a professional and not as a student. And yeah, certainly a worthy challenge. Um, and I think I wouldn't trade this experience for the world. I was told that in the Notre Dame, what was it called? Cathedral, that we were the first piano to be recorded in that space. That was a grand piano. It's the oldest church in Montreal, right down St. Paul. I'm terrible with the French names. I can't believe I forgot it now. But um, the Chapelle. Notre Dame de Bonsoir. Yeah, thank you. Notre Dame de Bonsoir Chapel. Yeah, thank you. That was it. So I couldn't believe that. Wow, this is such a historic hall. They had to build an artificial stage because the tiles, I think, were from 1600s. They said that was. I couldn't fathom that. That's what an adventure we've had this tour. And I'm so grateful to each and every single one of you that came. Sincerely, I think I have the best audience, and the reception was great. I've had some musicians. I've had some amateurs attend. I've had people that didn't understand anything of music and were new to some of the classical repertoire that was being performed, not to mention my own compositions, and they quite enjoyed it. I've tried improvising on stage for the first time. I tried my own free cadenzas. I genuinely didn't prepare anything. And night after night, I kept it a little different. I suppose I had some chord progressions in mind um, to, I guess, ground myself. Especially after the first two concerts, I think I memorized the the patterns, but I tried to keep it different for that piece. And what an overall great experience. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. So I'm very grateful to each and every single one of you that came out for this. And I didn't think we could do this, especially so early on. We just started I just started like professional endeavors, I suppose. I didn't really think that a tour would be in the works so early on, but but it was, and I'm very happy that I did it in Canada. I'm never been prouder to be a Canadian than these days, I feel. Um, yes, just wanted to share that with you guys. So, um, on that note, maybe it's also a good thing to talk about some future plans. So right now I'm working on a top secret composition that I cannot tell you yet, but I'm excited to announce that this might be the single most colossal work I've ever done in my life. And I think it is certainly, if you cannot see it with the bags under my eye, it is improving itself to be quite a behemoth. Um, it is orchestral, and I will be returning to Baku, to the country, the city that I was born in, to go back on that philharmonic stage with hopefully the Philharmonic Orchestra, hopefully next fall. But again, we are in the early stages of negotiating these timelines. I'm hoping to actually conclude this composition within the month or two, and Lord knows when to actually publish it with a recording, but get a deal for that and a schedule for that. But I'm incredibly excited, and all I will say is that this opus, Opus 10, is going to be, well, I could say this. It's going to be 40 minutes to 45 minutes of continuous music. And it won't be boring. I hope. Sincerely. I really don't want to give away anything more, but it's been I've been coding so much in it. I've been having so much fun with it, And I cannot wait for you guys to hear that, sincerely. Now, with that being said, while I'm composing this, we've also received excellent news that the Calgary Central Library wanted to have us back for some lectures. So we did the Between the Notes series in the city, talking about some different eras of classical music and their aesthetic pillars and whatnot. And we had 12 new lectures requested this year, and we're going to be doing one a month, an hour and a half lecture in a, as a composer series. We haven't come up with a name yet, but we'll be literally announcing it in the coming week. So some of those dates and these events will be free to attend for everybody. So but you do need to sign up for the seating because there's limited seating. There'd be up to 300 seats on these lectures. And we're looking forward to it. It's going to be amazing. And we're going to be doing all new composers every month. I will be playing examples of different pieces, looking at their compositional output, some of their struggles that they had to overcome. So talking both biographically and musically towards of their artistic endeavors, their passions, whatnot. I'm incredibly looking forward to this because it's forcing my hand into research into some of the people that I knew I loved and I wanted to share about, but I didn't know so much about. And I'm finding out all these wild anecdotes about these great people. And and please come out for that if you're local here in Calgary, and tell your friends. And would love to see you guys. And the reception for this has been tremendous. And I think I you guys have been an astounding audience last time we did this. And I think by the last lecture we had over 400 people sign up. It was just I couldn't believe you guys wanted to come out for for this. Maybe it's not good that I say that, um but I will be doing my best this time, and I'm incredibly excited. I love the venue. I love the central library, and I feel like we have something really interesting going. So that's something to look forward to more recently. Um, so I'm going to be taking now the Q&A that Tanya has prepared for me, and so let's see what questions you have. All right, so uh, here's the first question. How are you feeling now that the tour is over? Relieved. In some sense, the tour went great. I will not say which two cities, but in two cities, my last movement of the piece has given me grief. Um, why would you end with a Moonlight third movement of the sonata? I don't know. That wasn't a good idea. But I was gassing out by the end, but we made it through on Miracle. And I think if Tanya approves the green light, we might have some of those footages to share. But we're yet to process so much, but relieved, but also very grateful. What inspired you to take on such an ambitious project, performing across 7 cities? Um, Lack of fiscal responsibility and general well-being and awareness. So, tell us a bit about your journey as a musician and what drew you to the piano and how has it shaped your artistic identity? So, I think we covered this earlier, and yeah, uh, absolute happenstance. We just happened to have an instrument in the house when I was growing up. I have no musicians. For generations, we never have any musicians, but I've just happened to idle in front of this instrument for all of my childhood, and my parents took notice. So I think, w- um, was there a moment in your life when you knew music would be your career? Yes, many times. I also had just about that many more where I didn't want it to be. So, uh, yes. Um, but if I had to say one moment, it would probably be now, actually, last year. We've been professional as since May, technically, if we're talking like earning money from this and trying to, at the very least. So we started a company with that. But I think that the decision that I made now has been much more grounded in the realities of things. And been very fortunate to meet my partner. I've been very fortunate to have an amazing manager. And overall, I think a lot of stars had to align for us to be here, but I feel like that decision was not taken lightly. So yeah, uh, the tour experience, preparations and challenges. What does the preparation for the tour like this look like? What does the preparation look like? Okay, can you talk us through your process? Yes, I can. I've tried, I devised a very tight schedule, especially when I started working with the Tchaikovsky, because I knew you had to cover some repertoire. I tried to do a piece a week, pretty much, on that front, but mostly focusing on the compositions. The issue is that quickly gave way. I stopped doing the Tchaikovsky, thinking, yeah, I could do this, I could do this later. But I was really worried about some of those opuses not being quite right and mismanaged my time really quickly. So I feel like if I've learned anything from this, I would say that you better be less optimistic with the rigor of certain schedules. It's certainly better if you can to at least have your concert program fully memorized and under your fingers 30 days before your first performance date, just because it is good to have several weeks where you're not performing it, in my experience. I prefer not to. In fact, during a tour, I never practice. I just kind of, once it gets rolling, I show up to the piano in maybe 20 minutes. You do some sound check things because they're trying to record with the microphones, and you play loudly, you play quietly, you run some scales, and you're good to go. So, but you don't want to overthink it, I think. But that's, again, to each their own. Um, Yeah. So, but barring that preparation, I think, what else did I do? I tried to work backward sometimes. Actually, I really enjoy that process for memorizing really quickly and effectively. I listen to the music a lot. In fact, to a point of detriment where my fiance wants to stab me because every time in the car or in the morning, it's the same pieces that are being played for a month straight, pretty much. I think I've heard virtually every performer that I could get my hands on for the Tchaikovsky season cycle. And then same with the same with the Beethoven a little later on. But especially I found out that one of my favorite pianists, Fazlesai, actually did a full Beethoven recording. And one of my favorite pianists of all time, by the way, right now, recently released a hammer clavier sonata that he does down in Marc Andre Milan, which I think is one of the greatest masters alive right now as well. Anyhow, so that is yeah, it's, I guess, sorry, I'm all over the place, but um I think that's mostly what I try to do. Also, a lot of coffee, even though it's bad for your circulation. Don't do it. I was told. So, but I do it anyway. Um, what were some of your biggest challenges you faced on the road, either logistically or creatively? Oh my God. So, on the road, we had a point where we had to wake up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and carry a massive case. So, uh, our team was three people. It were rather a small team, and we tried to do everything ourselves. We brought in so much equipment, microphone stands and microphone equipment and sound cards. And Christ, we had all these massive Pelican cases, and we were hauling this oversized luggage that was my height and probably my weight. It felt like, eh. and yeah, we had to do it early in the morning. We had to haul it from car to car, from Uber to Uber. Then getting into the venue, then in the airport, the same thing every time. Like, what's in this? You have to open it because it looks like a gun rifle case. And admittedly, so I was actually quite relieved that they were so thorough in some of those checks. But man, was that a pain! You're hauling this massive, heavy thing at every stage of the way, and and I felt like I had a mean pump in my arms before I even started playing a single note for most of those venues. Um, but the wake ups, I had 4 a.m. wake up and rush into the airport, and then I had 3 a.m. Wake up. I think one was from Montreal to Vancouver, and then another one was probably from Victoria back to Calgary. But man, that was exciting. We've also had some epic failures on the road, which were hilarious, but I think I'd rather keep a little private at the moment. But we've eaten pretty well, at least. That helped. Um, but yeah, certainly the wake ups, the 3, 4 a.m. wake up, and then you're playing at 7 p.m. that evening, and you have to set up. So we would go to 2 p.m., set up the venue while my friend Alex was with us helping. While he was with the audio people trying to set up the mics and whatnot. I was even napping at one point, I remember. So, um, yeah, I think in Montreal, I literally took a nap until from 2 to 6. I got up, I literally changed and went to perform because I yeah, definitely needed that. So, so you visited 7 cities across Canada. Where were there any particular venues or audiences that stood out to you? All my audiences were amazing, so I will not differentiate. Some cities we did undersell, some cities we did really good, but I think it is all within what we expected, and I think there are some cities that stood out to me a little more. Just because I've been new to Montreal, I've really enjoyed Montreal. You're right on St. Paul, the old city, and that road. We ate in a wonderful restaurant. We had great company. We spent an amazing time there. But for instance, less glamorous for me in Vancouver because I've been there before, and I suppose. But aside from that, I wouldn't really say I have a favorite. Although I will admit probably performing at that church in Montreal was the closest thing to a religious experience I have felt in a very long time. Now, um, Canada is known for its diverse landscapes and cultures. Okay, did these differences influence your performances or mindset as you traveled? Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, no. So, um, I think I was in a very similar state for the whole month of November. I think I was idling at somewhere between really hilarious melancholy, observably hilarious at least, to um just outward sleepiness. So, and I think I existed somewhere between those two states, and it was. But you know what? Despite being work, I think this was the most fun I've ever had working in my life, easily put. No matter what the obstacles were. Um, your program combined your original compositions with Beethoven sonatas. How did you decide on this balance? Honestly, I didn't. I wish to be truthful with you guys. I take painstaking time to craft a program to make sure that it is good in its procession and a lot of things. But I was really disappointed in myself when I decided to quit on that Tchaikovsky because that was my initial intention. However, I did try to prioritize quality. And those sonatas that I chose were something that I was familiar with in the past, and I could rely on delivering a more earnest quality of work. So, and honestly, also Beethoven sonatas are timeless classics, and they belong in any repertoire listing, I think. So, it was the responsible choice, I would say, given how to we had to adjust to. Okay. Um, Were there any particular Beethoven sonatas that resonated with the audiences the most? Ooh, okay, so and how did your own works fit alongside them? I don't know if I'm fit to answer this question. So, I generally, if I'm being honest, I think I did better with my own compositions than I did with the Beethoven sonatas. But I always think that because I prefer playing my own works in general. I feel more comfortable for obvious reasons. Um, But the reception has been to the concert as a whole. I don't think I've really heard anybody come to me and say that one or the particularly something else was the thing that blew them away. Some people really like certain opuses of my composition. Some people didn't feel the need to share that. Some people came up to me and said that was my favorite sonata. I didn't know if he knew, but it was nice to hear it again live. Or I've had things like that said, and again, all very kind sentiments I've had so far, which I'm extremely grateful for. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so Your compositions were a key a part of tour. Wait, what? Your compositions were a key part of that tour. Christ, read it. Okay. Uh, could you share what inspired your original music? Life. I think I okay. So, what inspires my music? That's a good question. Where to begin? Here's where I will say. This is going to be a bit of a lengthy answer, but I hope it's worth it. So, in the beginning, I probably before I published my first opus that I have reset since, I've had the thought between where does an ideal medium of art exist? I was writing this in form of paper while I was still in university. I don't think I ever concluded that. And I was thinking there could be only two forms of ideal art on a spectrum because I guess I was looking a little more from a utility perspective. And I was thinking we have five sensory faculties, and we can utilize them to explore. So either you're going to be a cumulative artist, where you say the perfect art or the ideal form of art is the one that stimulates all of the senses or sensory faculties simultaneously and to a high capacity. So that's the perfect form of art. It's like a and we certainly do have everyday forms of cumulative arts like movies where we employ many different things of drama, visualization, sound, but you can't really taste the movie. There's less tactile things with that, you know? Um, and I think that's the unicorn form of art that could be explored. Now, on the other side, I was thinking about the puristic side, which I think I've given most of my life to working on, where we work on visual art for visual art's sake, auditory art for auditory art's sake. So I wanted to be in that camp of the purist approach towards sound's sake. And but in that, I definitely have forms and influence. But how do I omit that from the audience's misconceptions? And I've made peace that I couldn't. So long story short, I decided to pursue a way to compose in a medium where none of my pieces have names. They're all catalog opus numbers. There's no visual arts associated with them. And sometimes like my opus 2 is clearly a waltz. Uh, but I don't, I wouldn't ever label it as such because most of my other works aren't in any clear form like that. And I prefer each one of these to be an individual painting of sound, if you will. And it's a glimpse and moment of time from my life. And that's all it is. And my first opus, I'll share a little secret actually with you guys that I didn't publicize. It is based on a theme. I thought it was sinfully boring, in fact, that I wrote when I was really young. But as a way of defeating my old insecurities, I decided to publish the first opus to be that one because I reworked it. I reworked it with a much more complex harmony with a different direction on theme B that I took completely made up. And and this was my way of triumphing over the old self. And this was important to me. So I had to share that opus one like that. And I didn't think people would really get it. And and to be fair, I don't really think it's an exceptional piece of work outside of this context, but it needed to be done. It needed to be done. So some of the waltz, but anyhow, so yeah, it's often just glimpses of my life, and it's stories that I try to put. Yeah, that's a good question. So, do you find your composition style influenced by Beethoven or other classical composers, or hmm, do you consciously try to break away from those traditions? I don't consciously try to force anything. I think I stopped trying to be original in some sense. I try to be a good melodist from time to time. Obviously, from Opus One, that might not be too obvious, but I um I do have my own priorities, aesthetic priorities that I employ. I have my own style that I like. I have certainly likened it to composers like Rachmaninoff and whatnot, with my maybe some of the harmonic open suspensions I take, and maybe my harmonic language is very similar to some of those composers. but I like to still think that I'm working in my own individual medium like anybody is. But overall, I sincerely do try to meditate to not concern myself with such things. Um, Even though at a different time I certainly would. Um, do you ever feel like you're in a dialogue with Beethoven when you play? Assuming when you mean like that I'm playing his work. Um, oh Christ, you know? Um, and then there's another quarter. What is that experience like? Huh. Um, that's a good question. So yes and no. Uh, Completely down to the moment. Seldom even has to do with the piece, admittedly, because I think I've played the Moonlight Sonata first movement, for instance, in my life. How many times? I don't even know. Since I was a child, every time is different. And believe me, when you're feeling sad and you're alone and maybe in the dark and you're playing that without a light in the room, that sonata hits different. Yeah, certainly. But it's down to moments, and no matter how meditative a performance experience is, I would say it is more seldom that intimate that you feel composer's intentions with every passing draw. I feel like we can't help but individualize it, but sometimes you can. You can detach yourself from that, and I think I've had that, but I don't think I've yeah, not consistently enough clearly to know, but but it is surreal when it happens. I think so. You feel a different level of intimacy. You feel like the composer of that piece to some little glimpse almost of a moment. Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any memorable interactions with audience members during this tour? Yes, all of you guys. Seriously, amazing. I met amazing people. I want in Victoria, for instance, we met a wonderful two people. I don't know if it's okay to mention their names. You think it's okay? Yeah, Wayne Beefus and Jerry. God, sorry, Jerry. I forgot your last name. I have to check. Um, You guys were astounding. They took us to the Bouchard Gardens after the day after they treated us. So we went for high tea. Man, that was astounding people in an astounding place. And true, I feel like I've met such amazing people on this tour. Astounding, simply astounding. And I'm very grateful for all of you. What do you hope the audiences take away from your performances? That it would be nice to see them again next time tickets are live. I'm kidding. So um I wanted them to not know, maybe. Yeah. I think I was more looking forward to debuting my opuses more than anything else. It's not that I don't enjoy performing Beethoven, but there's something about sharing new music, new ideas, and having genuine and authentic reactions, I suppose, and that is very unique. Have you had any memorable interaction with the audience there? Sorry, I read that one. Did you have any moments of self doubt, and how did you overcome them? Did I overcome them? Oh, oh boy. Um, yes, yes. I was freezing in one of the concert venues by the end in Edmonton, and I was thinking to myself, I don't know how I am going to make it through the third movement of the Moonlight Sonata. I have a very complex torrent composition in the second half of the concert program already that expends a lot of energy, but I need to leave something in the tank. I kept thinking that. So after the first half of the concert, I thought, okay, that was a good. I have strength. I'll be okay. But literally, with every creeping second of that second curtain, I felt more and more and more in trouble. And let me tell you something, in a cold hall, when you start to sweat, it freezes on you. It freezes on you really fast and it hits you to the bone. And Did I overcome it? I did play the Beethoven to the end. Um, Maybe I'll share the recording with you. There were some mistakes in that time, but I like to think not too noticeable ones, unless you're a musician. But in earnest, I have to admit that it wasn't ideal. But we did make it through. We did make it through without stopping. We did make it through without memory glitches. So there's a lot worse things that could have happened. But I am still very grateful for the experience. Wouldn't trade it for the world. And even Alex announced it as Beethoven performed in a cold hall, and he mentioned an anecdote from 1808 or something. So and that was cool. So um, the hall wasn't normally like this, by the way. They're an amazing venue. It's just that that particular week, their heating broke down. It was very unlucky. So okay, now that the tour is over, what's next for you? I think I've mentioned that for future projects. We're incredibly excited for the lectures and the future concerts to come. Um, okay. Advice for aspiring pianists. I like that. You even put a heading. For aspiring pianists listening to this podcast, what advice would you give them about pursuing a career in music? Do not listen to any musician telling you advice about a career in music. That's what I would say. Um, oh God. We're probably in inflation. I don't want to really sound like an old guy babbling on about a bunch of things, but if it is what you're wanting to do, um, then everything else is kind of minor the point to some extent. I understand you have to be a responsible person, and sometimes it is important. Huh. I think I'm that terrible person, and you shouldn't listen to my advice in any of this. But if I was to give you something a little tangential to this that might actually help, I will say here's one form of advice. Don't worry so much what other people think. There will always be a better pianist. There will always be creative people. There will always be interesting people. There will always be people that persevere. But there'll only be one of you. Be yourself and be okay with it. And only when you truly let go of trying to do something larger than you, in some sense, can you genuinely give into the process? Can something actually be larger than you? Or at the very least, I'm really praying that's true. So, that's my only advice. So, what is one piece of wisdom you wish someone had shared with you when you were starting out? It is easy to be a good person when times are easy. Who you really are shows when you're at your lowest, and what you do when no one is looking. I don't know how this relates to music, but I feel like that's, yeah, but somebody told me that when I was younger. What's your favorite Beethoven sonata and why? Now that is a rabbit hole. So, do I have a favorite? No, right now it is number 30. It's like dun 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 dun. Hit. But I like them all for different reasons. Growing up, I definitely would have said Tempest, number 17. I love the first movement so much, and obviously the third movement. Um, but where I'm sitting right now, the second movement, especially of the first F minor sonata. That's what I will say. It is my lullaby. It is the youthful spirit of Beethoven and innocence. That Man, this is an impossible question. How do you answer this? So yeah, I'm even being specific. I guess second movement of the first F minor sonata. So yeah. Okay, so here's a couple more last questions that are a little shorter. Okay, so coffee or tea on tour? Definitely tea. I love coffee more, but it causes poor circulation, and I keep myself in good shape during tour, or I'll cramp up. And I'm trying to avoid, and any pianist should for sure avoid all these tennis elbow, ground floors, elbow nightmares. So be careful, especially if you Beethoven sonatas with tremolos for 2 pages. So favorite city to visit on this tour? Montreal, because it's been only my second time in Montreal, and Victoria because of its beautiful gardens and astounding season. We also went in November. It's a good. I mean, I feel like Victoria doesn't have a bad season, but anyway. So yeah, if you weren't a musician, what would you be? Hmm, an architect. I really love buildings. So, and I love engineering careers. Uh, am I good with any of them? No. Should never be trusted with any of them. I will make the roof collapse on you. But I am astounded with what some people can accomplish in that medium of expression, and I feel like these monumental things we leave behind are what a beautiful legacy for humanity. If you could collaborate with any composer from history, who would it be? I would want to, first of all, forget collaborate. I want it to be one of Bach's children. Damn it. Um, but okay, if I had to collaborate with one, oh god, this is also impossible. How do you answer this? Um, I feel like I wouldn't choose another Russian composer because we would be too sad together. So, and I feel like if I chose a German composer, then they would just stare at my jokes in disbelief. So let's play it safe. And oh god, oh, I think you broke me. Oh no, my manager is whispering Rambo, Rambo, because I've been listening to a lot of Rambo right now. No, no, I have beef with the guy who created the tonic and dominance, and I'm just gonna give me grievance and university harmony. What? No. Let me think. You put in that 1 hour later? Yeah. Oh. Okay. Oh, still blanking. Vivaldi was so creative when he went to Venice. He was I mean, if that story with the ladies in the spire was true with the nuns, man, I'd like to collaborate with that guy. But I feel like if I wanted to work with a composer from the past, I feel like Beethoven would just yell at me. And Mozart would just not care for me. Mm. I'd want somebody who is willing to sit in a conversation for a long time. Um, let's make it Haydn. Yeah, let's make it Haydn. I think that he was the perfect person to have. Also, have you seen the Esterhazy Palace? Holy crap, it's a good company. So I can never answer this. Like I don't know where to begin. Um. Okay. And I have two questions from my manager here for you. Where can listeners follow your journey and stay updated on your upcoming projects? Thank you for mentioning that, Tony. So, funny, you should ask. All this information will be available on my website. We will keep it substantially in better shape now that the tour is concluded. So, all the information will be there, and a good place to follow me would be on Instagram. I'm not very tech savvy, but thanks to my manager, I we are quite active on that platform, and we excuse me, everything will be announced through those social media and website. Yeah, so you can find everything on ozanardic.com. And you can also sign up. There's a newsletter update, so we don't tend to spam. I'm not going to send you everything. Just on when there is actual tickets to be purchased or events that are coming up, we'll give you at least a 2-3 week notice. We try to do it earnestly in substantially more advanced because, for instance, we should know 12 lectures right away here, and all the dates should be announced. So yeah, the website would be the perfect place for that. Any final words or reflections you'd like to share with your audience? No, I just wanted to say how grateful I am. I feel like I've said that several times throughout this podcast, but I it is a sentiment that words cannot do justice to. I feel like none of this could be possible without you. None of this could be possible without you. I'm pointing at my fiance right now. For those of you who can't see her, she's behind the camera, and this has been a good trip. It's been a good trip. Let's see where it takes us. Also, we must ask you guys to share some of your feedback as to if you like this type of monologue podcast or if this is too boring. Um, we could do it on any subject. I'm just trying to be a little more active on some of these social spheres. I like sharing my own opinions. Why not? And also, if you guys have any questions regarding this podcast or maybe some of the other ones, or if you attended any of the lectures or concerts, if you want to know anything, please comment here on the YouTube channel would be the ideal spot to do this. I'd love to get any and all feedback. Thank you.